Well, a lot of things were going on back when we had that communist dictator Bill Clinton in office. Uh, Here's some of only a communist would boast on this kind of stuff. Roast President Clinton for continuing to push for legislation making it a crime to engage in so-called hate speech, whatever that might be exactly. The First Amendment guarantee of free speech, like it or not, gives us the right to say insulting and spiteful things about each other, and there are already criminal laws in the books to deal with anyone who would turn words into action. But now Clinton would chip away at the very cornerstone of our Constitution for the sake of political correctness. Yeah, we've never had that word before either. Shades of Orwell 1984 and the Thought Police. Remember, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Now we'll get on to more Bill Clinton's crap. This was American Survival Guide, January 1993. We're going to talk about martial law. Normally, a state of martial law will be proclaimed by the President. In the absence of such action by the President, a senior military commander may impose martial law in an area of his command where there has been a complete breakdown in the exercise of government functions by local civilian authorities. That's an excerpt from an International Pentagon document dated December 1st, 1983. In 1983, a secret briefing was held for the House Committee. The purpose of the briefing was to outline in general terms the plans by which the federal government could cope with large-scale national emergency. During the briefing, representatives of the Federal Emergency Management Agency outlined elements of a special piece of so-called standby legislation which is to serve as a blueprint for dealing with such emergencies. The standby legislation was officially known as Defense Resource Act, DRA. Despite its sounding title, the Defense Resource Act was actually the framework for the government that could use to suspend the Constitution and impose martial law during an emergency situation. Now get this straight, people. No law can be made by an agency that supersedes the Constitution of the United States of America. You just can't go out and suspend the Constitution. Abe Lincoln did that. That's why he got shot. He didn't get shot because of slavery. It's because he suspended the Constitution and they called him up on it. Okay. In his book, Freedom Under Fire, Michael Linfield describes the Defense Resource Act as follows. It's a female martial law plan entailing a dismemberment of democratic rights for more severe than any previous wartime violation of civil liberties. It was written to be part of an executive order that President Reagan was to sign and keep it secret until necessary. If either President Reagan or Bush have signed such an executive order, the suspension of the Constitution, the replacement of elected officials by military commanders, the declaration of martial law, and the incarnation of millions of innocent people could begin at the outset of the next war, or a U.S. military invasion of another country, or a president's declaration of a state of national emergency. The phrase national emergency has no precise legal meaning. There is no specific constitutional authority given to the president regarding the declaration of a national emergency. So through custom, not law, the president has been given a wide latitude in deciding whether or not a given crisis meets the criteria for the declaration of emergency, such as that. Okay. Yeah, the Federal Emergency Management Agency was created in 1979 by President Carter to consolidate the peacetime emergency planning activities of some 26 federal agencies, including the Department of Defense. A major portion of FEMA's activity involves the coordination of federal, state, and local agencies during natural or man-made disasters. However, FEMA has a second highly classified mission. It is the agency charged with planning the imposition of martial law in the United States in the event of insurrection, nuclear war, or widespread civil disturbances. The agency has already conducted war games and planning exercises to ensure the government's ability to suppress disturbances and impose martial law during a declared national emergency. The Defense Resource Act is the legal framework by which an agency intends to accomplish this mission. Now, their very first thing is that if something happens and this act is invoked, that they're going to have an emergency situation confronting the United States requires that the President, by authorizing to act immediately to mobilize fully the nation's resources. And that's what Trump did today, the 13th of March. Its purpose of this act is to provide such authority and the intent of Congress that the powers hereby granted should be broadly construed to effectuate that purpose, but with all possible regard to the ultimate preservation of our form of government, our personal liberties, and our way of life. That statement has all the possible regard to our personal liberties will be given. Seems like it intended to reassure the public that the government will continue to recognize the rights of the individual during the emergency. However, despite this intent, however, an examination of some of the provisions of the DRA clearly shows that the Act is a vehicle by which the federal government can and will suspend the Constitution and the rights and the protections it guarantees to all citizens, both individuals and as groups. Now get this through your head, people. No one can suspend the Constitution and your rights. I mean, if they want to do that, it's called a dictatorship. Now, if there is no more rule of law, if this agency decides to take this under their umbrella of so-called law, it does away with the Constitution. And when that happens, it's without the rule of law. That means legally you can shoot these son of a bitches, and you can't be charged for it. There is no laws left if they suspend the Constitution. Period. They can come up with all the lawyers and give you all the doggone static that they want to. It's crap. Another section of the DRA is Section 202, allows the President to confiscate any real estate or personal property that shall be deemed necessary for national defense purposes. And that's one thing. This provision, in essence, gives the government unlimited authority to take anything from anybody during an emergency. It could be, for example, used to confiscate all legally owned and registered firearms. Such an action would be made all the easier, of course, since the names and addresses of all legal gun owners are already on file. Okay, you getting the gist of this stuff. Whoop, kind of losing it here. Hang on a second. Comes to me, Article 1, Section 9. Give me a second, people. Yeah, that's where it's at. Let's see if we can get this up here. The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when in the cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. Now see, that's the only part of the Constitution that they can do stuff with. Everything else stays as it is. They cannot suspend the Constitution. Only the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended, unless when in the case of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. That means they can put you in jail. Okay? That's all they can do. All this other crap that they're doing, they're manufacturing this crap. FEMA is. It's like this Rex 84 that they had. This was their attempt. They started planning this Rex 84. It was designed to test the agency's ability to respond to a declaration of national emergency. They had a FEMA at the time. General Louis Guaffrey or something described Rex 84 Bravo in a memo as the largest civil mobilization exercise ever undertaken. He wrote that to Attorney General Edwin Meese. And it was an exercise that was conducted over a period of 2 weeks. It was based on the following scenario, an invasion and so and so. And in a biography of Oliver North, Guts and Glory, author Ben Bradley cited a court affidavit filed by the radical left-wing Christic Institute that purported to describe the goals of Rex 84 Bravo. Says it was designed to test FEMA's readiness to assume authority over the Department of Defense personnel, all 50 state National Guard forces, and a number of state defense force units which were created by state legislative enactments. FEMA would deputize all Department of Defense, state National Guard personnel as to avoid violating the Federal Posse Comitatus Act, which forbids using any military forces for diplomatic or for domestic law enforcement. So keep this stuff in mind. This is what's going on in the United States, people. It's not all, certain people got to remember something. During LA riots down there, the police withdrew, and they literally told individuals and store owners that they were on their own. Then authorities banned all sales of guns and ammunition so that those who were on their own were left defenseless. Even those who had purchased their weapons week before the riots had to undergo a still 15-day waiting period, so on and so forth, and they didn't have their guns when they needed it most. Certainly this and any other legitimate government requires the ability to cope with and respond in emergencies, but like any other government, our government too is capable of exercises and mistakes. Such excesses are most likely to occur during times of tension and emergency. The only tools that people have for keeping potential government excesses in check are knowledge and vigilance. These are the keys to our freedom, both in times of quiet and in times of emergency. Okay. So much for martial law.